Welcome back to the Select Start Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Ace, and Week 4 is in the books. Back again, we have our usual suspects, Kosher Killers in the house. Are you 0-4 this year, or do you have a win yet?
No, I am 0-4. I've got the bagels going. I had the worst of both worlds on Sunday night, where Kittle did just enough to completely destroy my fantasy team, but not enough to lead my favorite 49ers to an actual win.
And so, guys, we got plenty of bagels in here tonight. Big
Cool,
Baller
man.
Edgar's in the house. He is undefeated. Close call this weekend. Probably your biggest test so far.
On the next one.
He's all business. And lastly, we have the commish, Ian spelled backwards. He's 0-4. He is certainly piling on the suspense. How are we feeling, commish?
One loss for each of my championships, so it's not a big deal right now.
Nice.
I'm ramping up the dramatics, so when my team bounces back, we can kind of get everybody healthy. We'll get back at it,
Well, Week 4 is in the books and highlighted by a number of standout performances. For starters, Joe Mixon bounced back in a big way, running for 151 yards, 3 total touchdowns. OBJ notched his highest score since his rookie year with 3 touchdowns. Suddenly, that Browns offense is looking like it's starting to heat up. Monday also marked another incredible tight end performance, with Aaron Rodgers throwing 3 touchdowns to Baby Kittle, killing the game, saving my Week 4 single-handedly.
The Bobby Tons, let's go. The matchup was too good. If you're playing against Arizona and you've got no Devontae Adams, you've got Alan Lazard on IR, MVS was never about to be that number 1 guy. Aaron Rodgers is cooking. Russell Wilson might be the MVP, but Aaron Rodgers is on a revenge tour. That matchup was lined up. Baby Tons coming through for Ace right there on the IE Pro Elite.
And that was against Atlanta, not Arizona this week. Arizona had their own problems with Carolina.
Big Baller is 2 for 2. Last week it was Jeff Wilson. This week is Robert Tonyan. You guys make sure you guys stay up to date with those COVID care packages. We're just about a quarter way through the season so far. I think it's safe to say that so far QBs are dominating early on. Before we get to top performers, just some general thoughts on where we are a quarter way through the season so far. I'll start with you, Nye.
The biggest thing that probably stands out for me is probably because I'm being affected by it a lot throughout my team as well, and I know a lot of you out there as well. Just the injuries, with Saquon being out, Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas being out the last few weeks. Some of these big name guys, some of these guys you've drafted, depend on, just not there, and you're left scrambling and hitting the waiver wires. Picking up the Robert Tonyans of the world, the Darrell Hendersons. I got beaten to the punch with Robert Tonyan, which leaves me a little salty.
Fairness, Commissioner, Big Baller had been mentioning his name for 2 straight weeks. Had plenty of time to pick up Robert Tonyan.
I mean, if you recall last week, I said, I'm going to go out and get Robert Tonyan. I literally forgot on waiver wire Wednesday to add him. It's a big story. You got him, good play. But yeah, just the injuries, but it was a good sign. We got to see some guys come back, from injury. But then we're left with another week of guys going down. We've seen Austin Eckler go down. We've seen Nick Chubb go down. We've seen a bevy of guys go down, which should create a lot of interest on the waiver wire for a lot of leagues this year.
Big Baller, quarter way through. Thoughts?
A quarter way through, stay the course. Don't overreact. Don't get too excited to what you see right now. My biggest thing, I'm looking at the New York Giants. I'm looking at a guy like Daniel Jones. We talked about it before the season started, guys. His schedule was disgusting to start the year. We talked about not wanting to start him probably the first 6 weeks of the season, and so far we've been right on point. Don't overreact to guys like this. Guys like Daniel Jones. I know other people have been. There was the worry about Tom Brady coming into the season. Obviously, we've got guys who've been dealing with injuries and haven't really been able to get going, but hold the course if you believe in a guy's talent. Look right now at the top performers. The top performers are guys with talent. It's your Kamaras. It's your Aaron Joneses. Even though they don't have the absolute highest volume, they have the role guaranteed and they have the talent to perform in that role. If you think that your guy has the potential to either develop into that role or he has that role, just needs a better matchup going through the rest of the season, take a look at what you got coming up. Don't just give up on a player because he struggled up until now. There's more weeks left in the season, and he's not going to always play the Pittsburgh Steelers or whoever that defense of the week is. So stay the course. Don't overreact.
All right, Big Ballers Harpin, stay the course. Kosher Killer, quarter thoughts.
One of the things that stood out to me a lot this week was we saw a ton of offense, and I think we're seeing offenses starting to gel a little bit, finding that rhythm where they would be at the end of a normal preseason. The big question is our defenses going to be able to adjust to it? Right now, we're seeing the offenses adjust. We are seeing a huge rash of injuries, including to players you probably spent a lot of draft capital on, but it's also too early to panic. Play the waiver wire, look at matchups, and it might not be the season you expect it to have, but it is still possible to salvage some wins. You just got to be smart with how you play the waiver wires and how you play your streamers.
Definitely. Staying on that waiver wire is key. Tuning into our podcast every week is key.
There are a lot of owners out there sitting out at 1-3, 0-4, such as myself and Kosher over here. And honestly, it's about evaluation at this point, and that's for a lot of teams. It's about evaluation, understanding what kind of team you have, whether, you can stand pat and move forward. If you've been hit with the injury bug, a lot of these guys are going to start to trickle back into the fold. You never know when a guy's just going to go on the COVID list, and it changes the complexion of your lineup. I think more than any year, this is going to be the year of the waiver wire.
If you're in 8 to 10 team leagues, there's still a lot of really good viable options out there. Right, let's talk top performers. Just off the top of my head, guys like George Kittle, who came back from his injury, and he came back in a big way. 15 for 15, 183 yards and a touchdown. Guys like Tom Brady bounced back quickly from throwing an early pick 6 to throw 5 touchdowns. He tacked on 369 passing yards. And then guys like Dalvin Cook, he now has 6 total touchdowns this season after tacking on 3 more on Sunday. I'll throw it back to you guys. Kosher.
And I'm going to keep it with the quarterbacks, and I'm looking at guys like Dak Prescott, who passed for about 500 yards, 4 scores. You've got Aaron Rodgers over 300 yards, 4 scores. And even Russell Wilson, the one week he doesn't look superhuman, he still goes for 360 yards and a pair of touchdowns. The quarterbacks had themselves a week this week.
Quarterbacks are definitely dominating. And even you see kind of tight ends jumping into the mix. I'm
going to highlight Odell Beckham Jr., man. It was fun to watch that game and them going back. Well, the Cowboys actually, waking up in the second half and kind of making it more interesting than it was. Odell Beckham Jr., 5 catches, 81 yards. He had 70-plus rushing yards on the ground, 4 total touchdowns. And that last one was so spectacular. It was nice to see Odell Beckham Jr. having a dynamic effect on the game. I like the way they're using him. This is another team that's kind of rounding into shape, into form, especially with the way they use their playmakers. I expect Odell Beckham Jr. to be more involved with the loss of Nick Chubb. Well-deserved shout out to Odell Beckham Jr.
Another one of those big-name wide receivers who we always kind of have a little bit of a question about how consistent they're going to be. I know that was my question about OBJ and Amari Cooper. Amari's always come into the season and has been super high volume, super consistent, but has failed to really push the upper limits of his ceiling until just this past week, where he came out of here with 12 for 134 and 1. Finally, Amari Cooper kind of comes through and gives you that upper echelon, upper tier wide receiver 1 performance that you would hope for if you had him on your roster. This Dallas attack has been going off. CeeDee Lamb had a good week. We've been seeing production on and off from Michael Gallup, but Amari Cooper has been consistent, and with that consistency, we finally saw the ability to touch that high-end scoring potential. So I wanted to give a quick recognition to Amari Cooper because that was a fantastic week from him.
Definitely his best week of the year so far. Let's talk about top disappointments. A quarter way through the season, guys that come to my mind: David Johnson, DJ Moore, Kenyon Drake.
Man, I will go with Phillip Rivers and the Indianapolis Colts passing attack as a whole. Rivers has been clean as far as limiting the turnovers the last couple of weeks, but I really thought that we would see him air it out a little bit behind one of the best offensive lines in football, if not the best. They've been great at run blocking, but the passing game has not started to click. I know that they've got some injuries to guys like Michael Pittman. I know T.Y. Hilton's been banged up. And I know losing Marlon Mack hurts, but I expected to see a little bit more out of them.
Phillip Rivers in the Colts passing game. Nye, jump in here.
Yeah, we were on the same wavelength there. Like, Larry, I was going to talk about T.Y. Hilton. Now he's the 77th ranked wide receiver behind Jalen Guyton, the Chargers of all guys. You said it, Coach. You're like the passing attack with the Indianapolis Colts. It just doesn't look like it's meshing very well right now. And granted, they've had a pretty decent schedule to start the year. I can't think of a pass catcher in that core that I'd really want. Honestly, T.Y. Hilton might be a drop candidate.
Big baller, jump in here, man.
I'm going to actually hop in here and call Josh Jacobs a major disappointment to this point in the season. And I'm going to push that. I don't see this absolutely turning all the way to the other side, not in the next quarter of the season at least. Looking at Josh Jacobs, he's had one fantastic matchup. He ate week 1. Carolina, we've seen be a smash point for running backs, and he absolutely did. He had 25 attempts, 93 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Kind of had you validating that Josh Jacobs belief. And he follows that up with 13 fantasy points, 9 and 10. They've been semi-tough matchups, New Orleans, New England, and Buffalo, but they're not getting any easier. His next really favorable matchup isn't until week 12 against Atlanta. Between then, he's got a bye, Tampa Bay, Cleveland, the Chargers, Denver, KC, all teams that have done well against running backs. Jacobs doesn't have that passing game involvement, has really buoyed other running backs in the past. Besides week 1, he hasn't seen more than 4 targets, hasn't gotten more than 3 receptions in any game. His yards per catch is not up to par. He's averaging around 5 per catch. Josh Jacobs is a major disappointment, and he needs to be talked about right now because this offense is not potent. This offense does not have all their weapons. This offense is not going off. Darren Waller is really the only other option that they have going there. I know Kenyon Drake has been a worry, but Kenyon Drake is on Arizona. If Arizona gets this figured out, some of those touchdowns that are going toward the quarterback position could quickly start to seep down to Kenyon Drake. I don't think Chase Edmonds is really taking Drake's role. He's not taking his snap percentage. Last week when Chase Edmonds did have a fantasy viable week, Kenyon Drake got injured early on. They said he had the air knocked out of him, and his snaps were limited as a result. So Kenyon Drake, I'm holding the faith. Josh Jacobs, there's no injuries that have directly affected his production. He's just failed to produce. Josh Jacobs has been a disappointment this far.
A guy most people have in their first round. I know I had him in my first round. Definitely disappointment so far. I want to play a little game with a couple of these players here. I'm going to call this drop or shop, guys. DJ Moore. Are we dropping him or are we shopping him? I'll start with you, Nye.
Definitely shop. I don't think he's there towards the drop end of the spectrum yet. Definitely a guy like T.Y. Hilton before a guy like DJ Moore. Honestly, I'm a fan of this Panthers passing attack. I know it's been tough for DJ Moore to start the season. I just think that, it's because he's trying to settle in with a new offensive coordinator, and catching balls from a new quarterback always is a different thing you have to overcome. I would tend to shop him, although I think you want to hold on DJ Moore and pretty much give it a few more weeks before you go shopping him. He's more of a guy you just want to stash on your bench and wait to see if he can develop.
Kosher Killer, drop or shop, DJ Moore.
Like Nye says, I think I shop him. I probably bench him. I'm seeing guys like Robbie Anderson developing that chemistry with Teddy Bridgewater, so it tells me that it's not impossible for these guys to develop that chemistry. The question is going to be a little bit more when. And the question is Carolina going to be willing to throw some more underneath routes to DJ Moore? Assuming they are, I think he's going to be a decent value play, but he's not going to be the big home run threat that we thought he might be.
He is a shop immediately after this week, and if he is not worth anything after this week, he's a drop in my opinion. There's always the chance that he does bounce back. I'm calling my own shot, though, on this one. DJ Moore is not going to bounce back this season. Robbie Anderson is performing much better for the team. He's performing much better for the coaching staff. DJ Moore's snaps are dropping. The next week is Atlanta. If DJ Moore does not produce next week, then if he can't produce next week and I can't sell him after next week, I'm moving on for somebody who is going to produce for my team. If I've got a really deep roster, sure, hold on to him. Don't drop him. If there's a guy like don't drop him in the same realm as a T.Y. Hilton or an A.J. Green. But if there's somebody who can help your roster in the next coming weeks, I actually will drop DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore's got a little bit too much name buoyancy keeping him up there, and I don't think he's really earned it.
With all the hype before the season, kind of inflated his value, and he's being drafted higher than he normally probably would have been. You just mentioned how unpredictable the season is. Who knows what could happen? And honestly, in that kind of offense, I think I would want to hold on to DJ Moore.
I definitely thought about DJ Moore last week as an on-the-clock candidate. I think we can certainly all agree that DJ Moore hasn't quite lived up to expectations so far. And lastly, David Johnson. We dropped or shop in David Johnson.
Neither. I'm holding David Johnson. With the news that Bill O'Brien was fired this weekend, I know that obviously kind of seems like this idea that maybe they're going to start going to a committee system, but I haven't seen Duke Johnson be used in a committee for more than a few passing down touches. David Johnson's still getting a couple targets. He's still getting high volume. Had a really, really tough start to the season. Like, this schedule was brutal. If you didn't draft David Johnson as your top back, which I wouldn't have, I would have drafted him at RB2, lower tier. I still think he's got the volume. That team doesn't have any new options. New coach, yes. New options, no. That ball's still going to be going to David Johnson. And we saw Todd Gurley have one of the better fantasy weeks, even though he played terribly because he falls into the end zone. David Johnson can do the exact same thing for you. I'm holding David Johnson.
Kosher Killer. Drop or shop David Johnson, sir.
I'm shopping him. I think he can put up the numbers like Big Baller just said, but I'm also looking to see if I can get a more consistent producer because we're not sure how that Houston offense is going to click. Although you got to figure it kind of be like the Jets getting rid of Adam Gase. The offense can only look better than where it is.
I see you came to me last because I actually currently hold David Johnson. Honestly, I'm holding on to David Johnson. It's the coaching change, and I really feel like, hey, you know what? Now is a good time to get a good real look at what David Johnson should look like as opposed to what he has looked like in that Bill O'Brien, orchestrated game plan. He was actually a player I was looking to shop before Bill O'Brien got fired. So it shows you how quickly things can change.
You guys ready for some pick two?
Yes,
One
sir.
offense and one defense from the waiver wire. This week, I got guys like Demarcus Johnson coming in for the injured Nick Chubb. Damian Jackson, running back from the New England Patriots, is back from injury. If you need a QB, maybe a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick, Gardner Minshew. I'll start with you now. Pick two.
With Nick Chubb and Austin Eckler going down, it paves the way for Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson, who probably should get a lot of opportunity in this situation when Austin Eckler going down.
So the offensive player I'm looking at is Washington tight end Logan Thomas. He had a bad week this week. Keep in mind he was going up against Baltimore. His next 3 games are the Rams, the Giants, and the Cowboys. In other words, 3 teams that have nowhere near the caliber of defense that Baltimore does. We see him trying to develop some chemistry with Haskins, and I think that the schedule favors his development a little bit. Defensively, I'm looking at a guy like Juan Thornhill, a safety for Kansas City, had a really strong game against New England. His next 3 games are against the Raiders. He's at Buffalo. He's at Denver, which means 2 of those 3 teams really love to throw the ball. The third one is working in a new quarterback behind a shaky line. We saw that rip in through, 3 picks this week, and that means that there are going to be opportunities for plays to be made by guys like Thornhill.
I'm going to start off with my defensive player. I'm streaming Denzel Ward. Cleveland Browns are going to be going up against Indianapolis this week, so he's got that matchup with Phillip Rivers. Obviously, they're not airing the ball out too much over there, but Phillip Rivers is a guy I do want to target with cornerbacks, defensive backs. There's potential every single week for there to be an interception. Denzel Ward had his first one last week. He played all the snaps, he played a lot of snaps, 82 defensive snaps, even though going through the week, there was the expectation he might not play at all. Played 82 snaps, got a pick against Dallas. Going against Indianapolis, I see this as another opportunity for Denzel Ward to absolutely produce. Plug him in that lineup. Next week is Pittsburgh. That might be a different story, but for this week, I'm absolutely streaming Denzel Ward. And my pick 2 on offense is going to be, I'm trying to decide between a couple of tight ends. They've got some really nice matchups, and I think that I'm probably going to stick with that game and turn to the other side of the ball, and I'm going to stream Mo Alley Cox. Cleveland has allowed production to the tight end position, and Mo Alley Cox has been a target for Phillip Rivers that he has liked to use in the end zone. He seems to really like having that really tall guy that he can just toss the ball to. I don't think he's going to be a high volume play if he doesn't come down with the touchdown. You're probably going to be out there a little bit up for in the dryness. Mo Alley Cox has come up with a touchdown 2 weeks in a row. Cleveland has been poor against tight ends. This is a matchup that I really like. Just to name the other 2 matchups I like Chris Herndon. He's going up against Arizona. Last year, Arizona was a great matchup for tight ends. They've been a little bit more stout this year, but they've only played, the Kittle game. Kittle didn't go all the way through. Washington, Logan Thomas has not been the guy despite the volume he saw early in the season. TJ Hawkinson gave you a little bit, and the Panthers don't use their tight ends too much. So the Arizona Cardinals could have not exactly faced off against a matchup that is absolutely going to set them on fire from the tight end position. I still think they're someone you can target with tight end. And Philadelphia is playing against the Steelers this week. I think Eric Ebron's got a nice spot here. Philadelphia has played 2 matchups against teams with non-existent, unimportant tight ends. The Bengals' Drew Sample had 1 reception. Washington's Logan Thomas had his best game of the year with 4 receptions and a touchdown week 1 against them. But when they played against slightly more talented tight ends, we've got 2 of the best tight end performances on the year, both against the Eagles. It was Tyler Higbee's massive 3-touchdown performance and George Kittle's massive 3-touchdown performance. This team could potentially be an option for streaming tight ends against. It looks like they definitely are setting up to be one, and we know Eric Ebron can definitely find his way into the end zone once or twice if the team can't keep up with him. And the Eagles might not be able to keep up with Eric Ebron this week.
Nice picks. Nye, did you want to jump in here and give us your defensive?
Let me add my defensive player for the week is Brian Poole, a nickel corner for the New York Jets. They're going up against Arizona this week. You should see a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. DeAndre Hopkins does like to travel into the slot. They don't really have a natural guy who follows anybody. Pierre Desir is another guy to keep your eye on. A lot of teams like to pick on him a lot, which is why he has 3 interceptions on the year. He also has a pick 6.
Last week, we pit Sony Michel up against Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins kind of wins by default with Sony Michel being put on the IR. Last week, chances are Kirk Cousins didn't win you your week, but he also didn't lose your week, which is kind of all we could really hope for at this point with Kirk Cousins. So this week, I'm calling Joe Mixon. We've been very critical of Joe Mixon on our podcast thus far. I think he answered the bell this past week with 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm going to pin him up against Justin Herbert, who had 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards on Sunday. Who we got, guys? Who's keeping that same energy? I'll start with you now.
How come we can't go, pin position up against position? Like, this is almost cross position. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to kind of make the judgment. I know we did last week. Sucks because I just got throttled by Joe Mixon. And I'm on
obviously
record.
Joe Mixon's not going to run for 150.
And I'm on record not being too favorable of Justin Herbert. You know what? Get back to me on this one. I got to toss and turn over this one. This is a tough one.
All right. Kosher Killer redirect.
I'll go with Justin Herbert keeping that same energy over Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is up against Baltimore this week. Next week, he's got Indy. He's got the Browns after. And the Browns played the run game pretty well against Dallas. They played Zeke pretty well. They held him to, I think, around 50 yards on the ground. Justin Herbert's got the Saints this week, and then he's got the Jets, the Dolphins, the Jaguars, the Raiders, and the Broncos. Herbert has a better chance of keeping that energy because of the schedule ahead of him than Joe Mixon right now.
Yo, guys, I think Joe Mixon might have just screwed over all of his owners by having a good week when he had no business giving you any hope. It was a fantastic matchup. Again, matchups have been a story, especially for me today, and I'll stick to it. Jacksonville is a great matchup. That's a young defense they can be taken advantage of on the ground, and that's exactly what the Bengals did. Gave Mixon more snaps, more rushing attempts than they've given him all season long, and just let him go to work. Baltimore, Indy, Cleveland, Tennessee, by Pittsburgh.
Trade him.
It's not going to keep up like this. Trade him if you can. Yeah. Same energy. I'm sticking with Herbert. I think he's getting a little bit more accustomed to just working in the system. He definitely was a rookie. We've definitely seen the ups and the downs. But you know what? This week, New Orleans, you can pass against New Orleans. They're more of a run defense than they are a pass defense. They're an improved unit than they've been in the past, but you can still get yards. I worry that it won't be a smash point, but you'll definitely get some production there. And in New York Jets, Miami, Jacksonville, the next 3 games after that, as long as he's in the lineup, I think that's a guy I'm probably starting over most guys. I've been making. I'll admit it. I've been making moves for QBs last week and a half or so, and I'd probably start Herbert over the guys that I picked up: Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones.
We got 2 for Herbert. Nar, you're going to complete the trifecta.
I am not. I'm going to say that Joe Mixon is going to keep the same energy, and that's because up until this week, he's been keeping the same energy the whole time. He's been a disappointment. He comes out and he has a fantastic game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, which doesn't say that he has any type of new energy. So I feel like, you know what? He's the same old Joe Mixon. We've mentioned his schedule. He's going to keep the same energy as he's had the previous 3 weeks. This week is just an outlier. It's a good time to trade Joe Mixon. It's a good stat line to shove in somebody's face and say, hey, look, Joe Mixon just did this. Give me a guy like Josh Jacobs. Joe Mixon will keep the same energy as he's had weeks 1 through 3. Week 4 is just a blip on the radar, a good time to move this guy because, like I said before, Joe Mixon, he is not an early season guy. He's a late season guy. He likes to leave you with a good taste in your mouth at the end of the season saying, hey, you know what? Joe Mixon should be a good player next year. And then he starts out the same way as he always does. You know, weeks 1 through 12, he's virtually non-existent with a few games here or there. Trade him right now. He's keeping the same energy. The energy's bad. Justin Herbert is playing well. That's all I'll say on Justin Herbert.
Damn. Nye wants all that Joe Mixon smoke. I just want to give our viewership a heads up. This is an extremely bitter version of the commission.
No, I'm just saying, like, move him right now. Honestly, if I was a Joe Mixon owner, I'd be like, yo, you got Josh Jacobs? Hey, you know, how about I'll sweeten it with a Mo Alley Cox, you know, or something like that, you know?
Well, that's going to do it for our Week 4 recap, Week 5 primer. You got any final words, predictions, rants, fellas, very quickly?
You know, I think Le'Veon Bell's going to come back and have a great year.
Okay.
I just feel like
is he getting traded out of away from the Jets?
And you know what? He might just be. He might just be.
And most importantly, stay the course. It's not the time to make too many moves. Now's the time to really focus on players that are actually contributing for your team. Less is more a quarter way through the season. For myself, for Big Baller Brand, for Coach Your Killer, for Nye, that's Ian spelled backwards. We are the Select Start Podcast. You guys make sure you like, you comment, you hit that notification bell to be notified of all our drops. Man, we're dropping all week, and we out.